Coming up next on Life on Air.
There was a time when, Matt Lauer was without a gig. And I remember meeting with him as a very humble man looking for his next opportunity.
Marta Tracy, one of the co-founders of Entertainment and the Style Network, is here to share her insider knowledge of getting on TV and also talks about the things you absolutely must have to be on air these days.
If you're in the industry and you want to be on TV, it's essential at this point to have a website. And it doesn't have to be the most expensive whammer jammer version.
Life on Air starts right now. Hey everybody, welcome to Life on Air. My name is Tim Tialdo, and you have reached the podcast for the TV hosting industry. My job is to connect you with the experts and help you to become the best TV host you can be. Now, some quick news before we get started today. For those of you who have a profile on LinkedIn, I've started a TV hosts group. I know there's a lot of media groups out there, but I wanted one specifically for TV hosts, so I started that. So if you have a profile, go find the TV hosts group, become a member. I'll be putting information on there all the time about the industry, any gigs that are available, and also lately I've been conducting polls. For instance, one of the big things right now in the industry is Khloe Kardashian good enough to be a host on the X Factor? So I have no doubt some of you will have some spirited discussions about that. So once again, go to LinkedIn if you have a profile and find the TV hosts group. Now, I'm very honored today to be joined by one of the original creators of Entertainment and the Style Network. She's been hiring and working with both talent and hosts for over 20 years. She's an expert at branding and positioning talent for TV and media. They kind of build awareness and credibility and bankability. And she's also the author of a really great book that I highly recommend you read if you haven't already had the chance to do so. It is called Starring You, and if you ever want to be on TV, either as a guest or a host, it really has some great information and advice that will really help you get focused on what you need to be doing right now in the industry. So, Marta Tracy, thanks so much for stopping by the podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Tim, and thanks for the endorsement of the book, which is really a basic Bible of how-to tips on positioning yourself as a brand in the industry. I know that you work with many people in your audience who are hosts or want to be hosts. If you're studying media training and learning to be a host, to think of yourself as an expert and to build a platform around that, because we never really know what possibilities are going to open up for us. And by positioning yourself as an expert, you have more possibilities of success and getting a paying gig, which is really the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the industry, people are starting to learn that they have to start thinking outside of the box, and you just can't be the talking head anymore. And I know you talk a lot about that in your book. If we could, very quickly, I want to go back to your experience. You were kind of part of the genesis of the entertainment media in Hollywood. I mean, the gateway for people outside of L.A. and New York to Hollywood is become Entertainment, and you were in on the ground floor of that. Can you talk about your experience there?
I was with E and the Style Network for 11 and a half years under the direction of Lee Masters and Fran Shea, who are incredible people to work with. And it was certainly startup, and it's been interesting to watch how the network has evolved since then. But it was, mostly I always worked very closely with talent, and in creating content, you have talent, you have an idea, and I always went to the talent first, because you can have the greatest idea in the world. If you don't have the right talent, the idea really isn't an idea. So I've always been a proponent of marrying content ideas with talent. And, one of the big buzzwords in the industry right now, which I'm sure you're aware of, is authenticity.
Oh, yeah.
And being authentic. And, especially as we are moving on to different types of screens and sizes of screens, from, the TV screen to your, mobile phone, being authentic and being really passionate about what you stand for is something that comes through very, very, very clearly. The cameras can spot a fake a mile away is one of the things that I say. So, being authentic and knowing yourself and knowing where your strengths are is can carry a lot of weight in this in this industry.
And you talked about working with talent, and I know you've had a good track record across so many places that you've worked with: Sony Pictures TV, E, Style, HBO, CBS, USA. I understand that at HBO you helped launch their entertainment news with a well-known guy that we see every morning.
Yes, that would have to be Matt Lauer, and he still is, my favorite. The point I want to make about that is there was a time, back then when, Matt Lauer was without a gig, and I remember meeting with him as a very humble man looking for his next opportunity, and he was working at a local show out of Philly, a lifestyle show. And we cast him to host HBO Entertainment News, and that became a platform for him to be noticed by NBC, and his background as an entertainment host helped to get him noticed. And as you can see, he's certainly taken advantage of that opportunity and is, a great face to see every morning on TV.
Now, I know you've hit on this a little bit already, and we've talked a little bit about it, but the kind of the current state of the industry is that the talking head of a TV host has kind of gone away, and now it's about having so much more than that. And I know you work with so many different people, including TV hosts, on how to get yourself onto a television, and as you talked about, be authentic and be real. So talk about some of the ways that you do that right now.
First of all, if you're in the industry and you want to be on TV, it's essential at this point to have a website, and it doesn't have to be the most expensive whammer jammer version, but a very clean, clear website with your photo. The first thing when somebody opens up your page, you just have a great photo of yourself on there. A bio explaining your background. And in your bio, if you tell your authentic story about who you are and where you come from, that is a story that no one else can tell, because if it's a true story, it's truly yours, and helps to make you distinctive and can help certainly for you to get noticed. And then in the website, I also recommend that people are clear about their area of expertise. And if they've been in media, to keep those logos right on your home page, so that a producer or a casting agent, when they open your page, they know that you have experience in media immediately. And that's what I call like a media-friendly site. So so having a website right now is I think imperative. And then certainly the bigger your platform, the more attention that you're going to get, because, every show is looking for ratings and eyeballs and looking for audience. So if you have built an audience with the different forms of social media, from Facebook to LinkedIn to Twitter, now Pinterest, that just become a factor. It's like, do you have an audience? Another thing to consider is if you do have an area of expertise, have you thought about publishing a book? And if you can do that, when you're pitching producers, they're going to end up at a meeting when they're making decisions, in a development meeting on who to book on a show or who to cast on the show. If you can say, well, why should we book this person? I've never heard of them before. Well, they have a book coming out in January. Again, that's going to be a factor that will help to build your credibility and help you get booked faster than someone who does not.
Now, for those experts out there, the people who do have a bit of TV hosting experience, but they also have some sort of platform or an expertise, and they are looking to get on TV. I know there's a lot of bad ways to try and go about it. Can you talk about some of the better ways to try and get booked on a TV show if you want to be?
It's having all of your tools set up, and being clear and concise. Again, if you're pitching a producer, you should have a link to your website, a small paragraph stating who you are, and then a number of pitch ideas that are appropriate to the show. And in my book, Starring You, we talk about knowing the shows. One of the worst things that you can do in presenting yourself to media as an expert is not actually watching the show. No, you need to know who the hosts are, and if the content that you're pitching is relevant. This is a classic example. I remember getting pitches as a programmer at E! and or Style, and they would pitch us like sports ideas, and I would well, I'm so sorry, but we're not covering sports. I think E! is now covering some sports stars as they continue to build their genre, but at the time they weren't. So what happens if you're not watching the show and up to date on the content and you pitch inappropriately, you can get, in a nice way, I'll say, dismissed. Sure. And in another way, I would say you go into the doghouse. And once you're in the doghouse, it's very hard to get out of it.
One part I read in that chapter that you're speaking of is that producers have a big pile of books. So if you actually have a book that you wrote and you send it in, that they tend to kind of throw it in a big pile with all the others. What's the best way if you do have a book to do that? If
you're published with a major entity like HarperCollins or say a Penguin Books, they do have a publicity department that will send the book out for you. And then often you can hire someone like me. I often am hired to augment the work of the book publicist. The book publicist goes in through the book producer. When you have a national show, there actually is a designated producer where all the books are filtered through this specific person. So the PR person would work through the book publicist, and then I come in as the augmented specialist, and I go in through the lifestyle producer, and that kind of opens up the window. What you want to try to create is, as part of the strategy, is that your book may come in from two different sources, and eventually, you have to also remember that producers are not the final decision makers. The executive producer, the co-EP, and the supervising producer have more clout in the totem pole of the hierarchy of a show. And if your name is mentioned through, for example, the book producer, and then the lifestyle producer knows about you too, it's like two people at the development table that know you, that have seen your book, and that's how the magic can happen.
Now, people look at like the Today Show or Good Morning America and think, those are almost impossible shows to get on. I have no idea how I could possibly get on there. But from what I read in your book, almost any show is possible if you got the right pitch.
If you have the right pitch, and again, the tendency for a new person that's pitching themselves in the industry would make the mistake of sending over a 10-page document, mm-hmm. and that would not be a good move. You have to remember and respect the fact that producers are very, very, very busy. A lot of them start very early in the morning, finish really late at night. So when you're sending a pitch, it really needs to be concise and precise. This is who I am. Here's the link to my website with my bio and and here's my reel, and here are my 3 ideas. Another really good tip is that you need to watch the shows and see how carefully they craft the segment ideas. Like every segment idea has a specific title to it. And I often advise people to look at the covers of magazines, like just past the newsstand, and you see how there's just in a very few words, they are able to get to the essence of the story that are featured in the magazine. And the same thing with the pitch. And lists are another thing that work, like 3 or 4 holiday looks to make you glow, glimmer, and shine. So the titles have to be sexy. And in a sense, by coming up with a great, clever, and sexy, concise, and precise title, you're doing the work for the producer. So it should be, again, they don't have a whole lot of time when they open up your email pitch, or if they're getting it in, by snail mail, they want to be able to, if they have like 10,000 pages, it's just too much work for them. So coming up with a great title that's catchy that they could potentially use on air. You have to kind of train yourself to think like a producer.
Sure, and I mean, reading the book, it really sounded like, what you're talking about is that you really need to understand the psychology of what a producer goes through, because one of the sections I read that I have found pretty surprising was that a host should never maybe go contact another host and say, hey, I've got an idea for your show, because the producer might actually find that insulting.
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly they're insulted when, again, you're not watching the show. And not up to date on what's on the content. You have to make sure that your content is a good fit. I think producers are happy when they hear from people who know the show and they're not just pitching. Doesn't feel like they're pitching 10,000 people. You can be, but when you're dealing with a specific show, it's always good to be up to date and be current.
Now, you have such a deep knowledge of the industry, and I think that's attributed to probably the amount of people that you know throughout all forms of media, and you have a chance to see not only where it's been, where it is, but also kind of where the industry is going. Can you talk about where you kind of see things heading right now in terms of, talent and TV hosting?
Well, I think that if you're studying how to become a host, that you need to be aware of exploring beyond traditional media. Video streaming is becoming more and more prevalent. A good example is the sugar sites, which I love. I think that the popsugar.com is the digital E, and they have different hosts, and they have entertainment hosts now, and they have health and wellness hosts, and they have fashion hosts. So these are opening up more opportunities that weren't there, 5 or 6 years ago. And I believe that is going to be an ongoing trend.
Well, we're going to have pages full of notes after this interview. I thank you so much for taking the time to share such a unique perspective and knowledge and advice. And I know it's definitely going to help some people move forward into kind of recreating their careers a little bit to move forward in this industry. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Folks, that is Marta Tracy, and you can learn much more about her at her website. It's martatracy.com. And once again, if you haven't read her book, it's called Starring You, The Insider's Guide to Using Television and Media to Launch Your Brand, Your Business, and Your Life. I highly suggest you go buy it right now, because you're going to thank yourself for doing so. You've been listening to Life on Air, and remember, the only way to predict your future is to go out and create it. Now go do it. We'll see you next week.